Okay, let me get some water. Okay, let me get some
Hello, everyone. Let's see, we are starting live in 5 minutes. And so let me see here how it's looking on YouTube. Um, all these gadgets without someone that's controlling this for me, it's kind of challenging, but and so let me see here how it's looking on okay. YouTube. All righty. All these gadgets without someone that's controlling this for me, it's kind of challenging, but okay. And so on YouTube. Um, there you go. Okay, perfect. So we'll be countdowning and starting in a moment. What I'll do is we will edit from here also. I usually like to have my music playing, but I did a test run. And unfortunately, that wasn't running like I thought it would, but I will add that in the edit version. Okay, 4 minutes. Let's see if it'll run again.
Thank
Wonderful. So it looks like we are getting ready to start. Again, this is a live recording, Dr. Byrd. I will cue you whenever through just basically saying your name, Dr. Byrd, or asking the question. And we will be going on air in about 2 minutes. This is live now, but will be edited and then shareable. But people can hopefully tune in live. Facebook has a lot of viewers, but I keep running into a glitch with Meta. So
you.
I'm having yes, of being able to go live using Zoom. I'm not sure if other people are having it. What I think is they want you to go live from off their platform
Okay.
versus
Okay.
platform.
Uh-huh.
And,
Okay.
um, Zoom is just an easier way to be able to archive and reproduce. So,
Okay.
yeah. Wonderful. It is 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, and it's also St. Patrick's Day. So I had to wear my favorite St. Patrick's t-shirt, and it says, "You had me at shenanigans." So, and happy St. Patrick's Day. This is Meaningful Conversations, a podcast that is designed to drown out the noise and lift the public discourse to a higher frequency. I'm your host, Dr. L, and I am so glad that you are tuning in. It is our mission to educate, inspire, and challenge everyone who tunes in to not just go with the headlines and the trends of the hour, but to really think deeper and more critically about social, political, spiritual, and health issues that are impacting our lives, our families, our communities, our state, our nation, our world. Learning and exploring is a lifelong quest, or at least it should be. Some topics and conversations that you hear on Meaningful Conversations will inspire, others, we hope, will challenge you and make you think more critically about an issue or a topic. Some will make you laugh, and others, honestly, might make you spit fire mad. Whichever way it goes, I hope that you will always leave meaningful conversations better and wiser than when you entered the conversation. Vibrating, as I like to say, at a higher frequency, spiritually, intellectually, and mentally. Well, y'all, I hope you know, March is Women's History Month. When we intentionally focus on the amazing contributions of women in our communities, state, nation, and the world. I know many of you are probably receiving daily notifications, I know I am, or have in some way received information about a powerful, a bad, you know what, woman, a famous woman who did something to change the world or transform society. However, I'd like for us to also think about ourselves as those women. Think about ourselves as those of us who, even in our small corner of the world or community, how we are making contributions and playing an important role in transforming the world. How amazing and powerful that we really are. I also want you to look around you, and every day when you come in contact with another woman, smile or do as the famous late Dr. Maya Angelou said, say good morning. Show them that you really see them and that you honor their presence just by being without even knowing anything about them or who they are. Let's make sure that we are lifting each other up as women because all of us are going through something, I'm sure, that will tear us down. Or as my favorite, one of my favorite poets, Lucille Clifton said, Every day, something is trying to kill us, but has failed. And as many of us continue to dedicate our lives in service to others and trying our best using the gifts and the resources that God has given us or that we have within our possession to make our communities and the world a better place, it can be exhausting work. We can experience many stressors just being a woman in this world. Y'all know,
Yes.
many of you have heard my favorite line out of The Color Purple, at least one of them. And I have, revised it a little bit. Sophia storms up there and says, when she makes that statement, when she's telling Mr. You told Harpo to be no, she's telling Miss Seeley, you told Harpo to beat me, and then she goes on and she says a girl child just ain't safe in a house full of men. Well, women aren't safe in a world that is controlled by men, and we're seeing some of that in some of the policies that are coming out of Washington, D.C., but that's for another time and another day. But what's so important is that we prioritize ourselves no matter what stressors we encounter. We are our number one project. We must make ourselves our number one project that we're constantly working on to turn into a masterpiece. With that said, tonight we are going to discuss a special topic. What's going on in women's brains? Now, before y'all men start with the jokes, especially the husbands and the significant others, tonight we're really going to explore a serious topic. A topic from the context of a disease that is impacting millions of people. Listen to a few of these quotes, and I need my notes. It is estimated that 7 million Americans are living with Alzheimer's disease. 1 in 3 people, 1 in 3, will die from either Alzheimer's disease or some other form of dementia. Between 2001 and 2021, deaths due to heart disease, which is the number one killer, have decreased by 2.1%. So that's on the decline, while deaths from Alzheimer's disease has increased by an estimated 141%, y'all. The lifetime risk for Alzheimer's at the age of 45 is 1 in 5 for women and 1 in 10 for men. Almost 2/3 of Americans with Alzheimer's are women. And also, when we think about it from the intersection, not just of gender or sex, but when we think about it, the intersection of race and ethnicity, older Black Americans are about twice as likely to have Alzheimer's or dementia as older whites. And older Hispanics are about 1.5 times as likely to have Alzheimer's or dementia as older whites. And I couldn't think of a better person to help us think through this, to help us really understand what's going on in women's brains as it relates to Alzheimer's disease and cognitive decline, than someone who I consider as a shero, someone who I consider as a mentor, in a lot of ways, just a lady who is amazing, dynamite. Dr. Goldie Byrd. Many of you probably know her and have heard of her, Dr. Goldie Smith Byrd. Let me just tell you a little bit about her. She is a native of Magnolia, North Carolina. She is the founder of the Center for Outreach in Alzheimer's Aging and Community Health at North Carolina A&T. Dr. Byrd never envisioned that she'd have such a passion for studying Alzheimer's disease. In fact, she originally wanted to become a high school principal going into college. This desire of hers changed, however, when she was given the opportunity to conduct research in undergraduate and graduate schools. Dr. Byrd attended North Carolina A&T for her undergraduate studies, where she earned not one but 2 bachelor's degrees. She went on to Meharry Medical College to earn her PhD in microbiology. Told y'all she's bad. After she was encouraged to do so by her mentors, Dr. Byrd became a professor of biology at North Carolina A&T in 2003. She eventually became the university's first female chair of the Department of Biology, as well as the first permanent female dean of the College of Arts and Sciences. During her time as the dean of the College of Arts and Sciences at North Carolina A&T, Dr. Byrd made the decision to found COACH, which again is the Center for Outreach in Alzheimer's Aging and Community Health. She conducted extensive research, in-depth research on Alzheimer's disease for many years prior to founding Coach. Dr. Byrd's research is published in esteemed peer-reviewed journals and has been recognized by the Alzheimer's Association. This research was the driving force behind her desire to create an organization aimed at providing education and awareness about Alzheimer's disease. Dr. Byrd was particular about Coach catering to African American communities because African Americans have an increased risk of being diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. Additionally, Dr. Byrd was mindful of the fact that African Americans typically have less access to factual information about Alzheimer's, lower perceived risk of the disease, lower literacy skills, and a misperception that Alzheimer's is a normal memory loss. I can't tell you how many times I've heard people say that, oh, you're going to get dementia when you get old. Furthermore, Dr. Byrd found that African Americans tend to be more confident in future advances in research, which is great to hear. Dr. Brown stepped down from her position as Coach's executive director in 2019. Dr. Byrd, but she still remains involved as an honorable founder. Her devotion to serving the African American community within the Alzheimer's sphere is unmatched and renowned. Dr. Byrd works as the director of the Maya Angelou Center for Health Equity, which is located at Wake Forest Baptist Medical Center until recently. Dr. Byrd is a professor of public health. She, again, has an impressive resume. She has served on many panels, ad hoc groups, and advisory committees for National Academy of Science, the National Science Foundation, the National Institutes of Health. I can go on and on. Her resume speaks for itself, and I encourage you to go to her website and learn more about what she's doing. But I want to jump on into tonight's conversation. Thank you so much, Dr. Byrd, for agreeing to be our special guest this evening.
Oh, thank you very much for the invitation. My pleasure.
Well, let's go ahead and get with it. Get in the conversation. Right. So for people who don't know what Alzheimer's is from a clinical perspective, what is Alzheimer's disease and how does it differ from dementia?
Okay, so Alzheimer's disease is a neurological disease. That means it impacts the nerves and really the hallmarks of it are the accumulation of plaques and tangles in the brain. And so that simply means that when these misfolded proteins in the brain basically clog up the brain, and it prevents our nerve cells from firing. If we were to simply touch our nose, just to touch our nose, it means that our neurons, our nerve cells have to fire. They have to communicate with each other. And so it's a neurological disease. It gets worse. Right now, it does not get better, except if you are able to get one of the newest drugs, which actually will slow it down. For the first time in the last couple of years, we do have a couple of drugs that were approved by the FDA to actually slow the disease down. But the difference between that, Alzheimer's disease and dementia, is that when we think of dementia can be caused by a number of things. And it can be caused by urinary tract infection. All that means is that is that there's a lot of memory loss, and there is a dysfunction in your ability to do your activities of daily living. So dementia is just a syndrome, it's a condition. And so you can have some dementia by, if you've taken too many medications and they start interacting with each other inappropriately, or a urinary tract infection, or some other kinds of things. So dementia is the big, broad umbrella term. And under that umbrella, you would have Alzheimer's disease. Alzheimer's is the most common form of dementia. About 60-70% of the dementias are of the Alzheimer's type. And other dementias, you might have heard of Lewy body disease, or frontotemporal dementia, or vascular dementia. You also get some dementias with Parkinson's disease. So there are a number of different kinds of dementias, but Alzheimer's disease is the most common form. and it is irreversible at this point. There is no cure for Alzheimer's at this point.
Wow. So, what are exactly some risk factors that people need to be mindful of?
Yeah, so the number one risk factor for Alzheimer's disease is age. And so when you said that people will say, well, you're going to get Alzheimer's disease as you get older anyway. Well, about 1 in 2 people after the age of 85 might get it as it goes now, but you don't you don't have to get Alzheimer's disease. It's not a requirement for life beyond 85. And so one of the things we want to do is to learn those factors that predispose us. Age is the number one factor right now. Um, Genetics is another risk factor. And so if you have a first degree relative, it means your risk is higher. A first degree relative could be like your mom or your father or your brothers and sisters. So it doesn't mean you will get it. We certainly don't want anybody to leave the audience tonight saying, oh, Grandma Lucy had it, so I know I'm going to get it. And the first time you start losing your glasses or leaving them in the living room and forget that you left them in there, we don't want people to walk away tonight thinking that because I'm experiencing some things and somebody had it, I'm going to get it. No, that may not be the case at all. And so we do have a number of people who are worried to death that they are going to get it because of those risk factors. And again, if you have repeated hits to the brain, traumatic brain injury, that's another one. And so what we want people to do, though, is to live their best life, to live their healthiest life, the healthiest life they can get. And also, we want people to go to the doctor when they start experiencing these signs and symptoms. I'm going to tell you that the Lancet Commission just came out with their most recent report last year that lists about 14 things that if we could reduce them in early life, middle life, and late life, we could reduce dementia by about 45%.
All right, lay it on us because we
So,
wanted to. What are they? Let's
okay.
start.
So in early life is education. So what
So
we
when you
know
say
now,
early life, like what? Or do you early life like
like
how?
when you're young,
Like how
when you're
young?
like starting, I mean, we really should start thinking about this when we're babies.
Really?
Yeah. Yes. And so when you grow up in a small town like Magnolia, like the one I grew up in, and it's a small tier 1 county, which means it's one of the least resourced that, um, when you as a child, when I was growing up, as a matter of fact, the school system was supportive. It was, but many people didn't go to school every day. My parents
Oh,
made us go to school.
you mean getting an education?
Getting an education. I
Oh,
mean,
gotcha. I
yes.
thought you meant early education about Alzheimer's. Okay.
No, no,
No,
no, no. I
no,
mean, education,
education. Okay.
education.
Okay.
Education is a risk factor, not only in terms of number of years of education, but also in terms of quality of education. So that's a
Okay.
huge one. That's really big. Just recently, we found that these social drivers are really, really important in this disease and many other chronic disease. So education is one of them. So in midlife, we're talking about hearing loss. This is a big one because hearing loss isolates us, just like vision loss. Um, we're talking about high LDL cholesterol, high levels of the bad cholesterol, which is our LDL. We're talking about depression, our mental health, traumatic brain, I mentioned that one, physical activity, big risk factor, physical inactivity, diabetes,
Wow.
huge, smoking. And I'm saying these slowly because we want the audience to really get them.
Right.
And if,
Yes.
if you want this article, I can send it to you and you can share it. Hypertension, obesity,
Mm.
excessive alcohol. And then in late life, we're talking about social isolation. Now, the Surgeon General, Vivek Murthy, came out
Mhm.
with a report a couple of years
Loneliness.
ago on
Mhm.
social isolation.
Mhm.
And we are a country of people being more and more socially isolated, even though we're on these phones and TikToks and different social media, um, but we're socially isolated more and more. Um, and so that's a big one. Social isolation and loneliness. And we
Yes,
can be socially out there and still be lonely. They're two
that's right.
different things. And then, of course, air pollution
Mm.
and vision loss. So basically, we're talking about our environment being really, really important with regard to risk factors that increase our chances of getting Alzheimer's disease. I really want to focus on that social isolation one because, you know, we're having fewer children and we're a mobile society now.
That's right.
And so just means we have to have circles of care all over and multiple layers of care.
Right.
Also, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I want to touch on the social isolation, especially with COVID. When we saw
Mhm.
COVID, and that was one of, it was misstated initially to do just that, social isolation versus distancing yourself, making sure that you stay at a healthy distance from people 6 feet or more.
Yeah.
But initially, remember when it first came out, the guidance first came out, they said to socially isolate. And so I'm so glad that you brought that up. And also, this whole notion about social media, people tend to think, oh, I've got all these followers or I'm on
Yes.
social media.
Friends.
Right. I got all these friends. But I often say that still doesn't mean that you are not socially isolated. And that does not mean that you are not lonely. Because,
Absolutely.
some people, I forget which, I think it was Robin Williams, someone said in an interview that he had done. He said that he can be around thousands of people and he still felt inadequate and alone.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so, I'm glad we are focusing on social isolation,
Mm-hmm.
especially for seniors who
Mm-hmm.
may have outlived their kids, or
Yes.
like you said, did not have kids or
Yes.
outlived family. Yeah, so that's
Yes.
that's real important. But
And
go ahead.
don't live in those tight-knit communities that we used to live in, where we
That's
could just
right.
go down the street or the road in
Right.
my case. And there was
Yeah,
grandma, there was aunt so and so, or yeah,
yes.
or
Yep.
good
And
neighbors that we
churches.
knew. Yes, that's right.
Churches are still virtual, some of
That's right.
them, even
Mm-hmm.
though, they may have, some have started back in person, but
Yes.
also that is a major connection network for
Yes.
our seniors in particular.
Yes.
And yeah, yeah,
And
wow.
churches and we don't go to the office either
Right.
necessarily. We might
That's
work
right.
remotely. So you
That's
have
exactly
people who
right.
may not see very many people or talk to very many people during the week.
That's
Mhm.
right. And Dr. Byrd, you mentioned several risk factors that might answer this next question, that question about, why more blacks than whites, why more Hispanics than whites. But when you started listing them and you said diabetes, obesity, and hypertension, those are three chronic health conditions that we are disproportionately have higher rates of. So,
Yes.
you want to talk a little bit about that, about
Sure, absolutely.
race?
So when we think about, often we think about Alzheimer's disease as a brain disease. Okay, but I want people to leave with understanding that it is a blood vessel disease also. And so
Hmm.
anything that impedes that blood flow is going to increase risk for Alzheimer's disease. And so, yes, we have more hypertension, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, stroke. And so those things are going to increase our risk for Alzheimer's disease. The brain is full of blood vessels. I mean, it's just loaded with blood vessels. So if we have diseases that 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 disrupt the flow of blood, we're going to have a significant increase in Alzheimer's disease. And so we
Right.
don't think of it that way. We just think of, of the brain, but the brain is such a vascular um, organ that it's just incredible. And so that's why we say that, and again, we think of it as an older person's disease. It is not just an older person's disease.
That's right.
There are two types of, actually, it's one type, it's a continuum, but we talk about early onset Alzheimer's disease. And so you can have Alzheimer's as early as 20, some. I think the earliest I've seen on the screen is, in the literature is like 27, 28. And
Wow.
people have the same symptoms. You, you, you inherited a different way than you do from the late onset sometimes, even though it is a sort of a continuum kind of disease. And so we want people, and that's why this Lancet Commission report is so important, talking about these modifiable risk factors, and those are risk factors that we can do something about. We can modify certain things. We can't really do much about our genetics, but even though our environment can impact our genetics over time, but these are things we can do something about. And so it's important then for us to make sure those numbers, our numbers are correct, are good. We can't eat as much salt and sugar and fat as we used to. We have to move these bodies. We got to move something,
Mhm.
you know. And even if we can't join an expensive gym, we've got to figure out how to move it, even if we have to move it in our homes. We have to do something to get some exercise and drop the calories and fat and salt and sugar. And so if we could just do that and live to learn to be healthier in general, we can reduce some of this Alzheimer's and some of this dementia, according to this report. Now, I'll tell you one of the things that um, I'm just hoping that Medicare will continue to exist, and that people are able to get to that annual wellness visit,
Yeah.
because in that visit, which it came out of the ACA, Affordable Care Act. And in that visit, people are able to get a cognitive assessment.
Ooh.
Okay. Most people don't know that, according to the literature.
Right. No, you're right.
And many primary care persons are not doing that test. And particularly if we're not asking for it. And so there's studies around that. So what we want people to leave tonight with is, if there is any concern about memory loss, confusion, behavior that's changed with our loved ones, we've got to get to our primary care doctor and get that assessment.
That's right. I'm going to tell people, even if there aren't any concerns, still go ahead and do
It
it.
wouldn't hurt, because you know
Right.
what?
It
It
wouldn't
would
hurt.
give your doctor a baseline.
That's right.
And so then later, if something is happening, that your physician will know.
That's right.
If
So what do they ask for? Do they ask for just that?
yeah, a
What
cognitive
do
test.
we? Because I
Yeah,
haven't had one. I'm going to ask for one.
yes,
I'm going to ask my husband to make sure he gets one too. My
yes.
mother, my mother-in-law, everybody. Yes. So we just say a cognitive assessment.
Cognitive, which is, when you think of cognitive, we're thinking of
Mhm.
our learning, our
Right.
our our ability to think and process. And so
That's right.
when we're getting ready to get a diagnosis anyway, a patient is going to get those initial cognitive tests to see if,
Great.
if we're thinking clearly, or if there's
Is it
what's happening with our memory.
Is there a link? Let's talk about stress. Is there a link? Has there been a link found? You didn't mention it from the Lancet article, but stress can be modifiable as well. Is there a link between stress and Alzheimer's and dementia?
So when we undergo stress, our bodies make hormones. and they make stress proteins.
Right.
And
Cortisol,
so,
all that.
yes, cortisol, and like cortisol, yes. And so when that happens, if we're in ongoing stress, then what's going to happen to our blood pressure? It's going to
Oh,
go up.
okay.
And so is there a link? Yes.
Okay.
So
And I'm thinking,
and
what about
just continuous stress, and you can't get relief. It is, yes, there is an indirect link there. Mhm.
And I'm thinking when you talked about the blood vessels, also oxygen, right? Not breathing, and constantly tight.
Yes,
Um, Not breathing appropriately, not getting good oxygen flow to the brain could possibly, I mean,
all of
also
that
be,
is linked.
yeah.
Stress is a
That's,
killer.
it is.
Period.
It is in and of itself. That's exactly right.
Yes,
I know it's like a predator. That's what I called it.
it
My
is.
research is around stress and its
Yes.
impact on chronic health conditions and disease. What about traumas? Can someone have can a trauma, whether it's ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, or I say traumatic childhood experiences, because a lot of people experience poverty. A lot of people experience some of what they identify as the ACEs. But
Mm-hmm.
what I do think that we need to pay especially attention to is traumatic childhood experiences. Because poverty isn't traumatic for everybody. Some people have been live in communities. I grew up in public housing in Chapel Hill, and
Mm-hmm.
but it was not a traumatic experience. And in fact, looking back on some of the things that we lost in community,
Yes.
um, going to the neighbors, borrowing sugar, having, you know, closing off the parking lot, having block parties, and Friday night, everybody, drinking and grilling, and the kids running around. I mean, so trauma. Can we talk about trauma and its
Yes.
impact?
So that kind of social trauma is what you're
Yeah.
talking about.
Any type of traumatic experience, whether it's social or whether it's, you know, uh, sexual violence, whether it's child abuse, any type of traumatic experience.
Yes, I am sure there are links to because we're talking about your mental health. I think I might have mentioned depression, but when we experience those things, we have all kinds of mental health issues that sort of go along with those. And so when we think of that, if that is untreated, it certainly should, I can't think of many things that wouldn't increase risk at some level. It's not
Mm,
in this Lancet report, but it does talk about depression. And so we
okay.
need to, and particularly with women, we need to talk about, which is another topic altogether, sort of altogether, but our mental health, which
Yes.
is something we cannot be afraid to address, and get help with. So absolutely.
Yes, and that's my jam, as they say. I do want to talk about what we can do in addition to all of the things that you have mentioned already. Is there certain foods that we need to stay away from? Are there vitamins you can take? I mean, we hear all kinds of treatments out there
Mhm.
on the market. What are some non-medicinal type or non-pharmacological response, or things that we can do that
Mhm.
has proven? I know on my doctor shocked me um, about an herb, and I didn't expect her to say, well, it has been proven and that was ashwagandha, and it wasn't on Alzheimer's, it was on anxiety. So there's a
Mhm.
study, I think it came out in JAMA, may have been in the Lancet, I'm not really sure, but for Dr. Jackson to say, yeah, you can try some ashwagandha. So are there things that we can try that you think are promising and have been backed by some of the science, or that you just think it's good practice?
So what I recommend, is a more plant-based diet,
Okay.
which like the Mediterranean diet, something like that. Less fatty foods,
Okay.
more salmon and canned fish and salmon. But that Mediterranean diet and more plant-based, and particularly red meat. We have in our house have reduced red meat quite a
Mm.
bit.
Yeah,
Um,
same here.
and fatty pork even.
Mm,
So we don't cook the same way we did when I was growing up on that farm. And so I think we have to drink fewer sodas, drink more water. If you can get it without the little plastics and all that stuff that's coming out,
yeah,
if you can get healthy water. Um, but and just less carbs. I mean, I think we have to monitor our weight. I know we do because those things increase the likelihood of hypertension, high blood pressure, diabetes, obesity. And those things are killing us as a people. It's starting in early life with our children. Our children are fatter and
yeah,
they're less active. They don't exercise in school like we used to.
right.
They spend more time behind these computers and things, and I think it's killing us.
Yeah.
And so, but with regard to diet, I tend not to talk a lot about supplements and nutrients and things like that. But I think just a healthier diet in general, staying away from a lot of the fat, salt, and sugar, as well, and breads, and having much more interest in taking. I take vitamins.
Mhm.
I'm not so sure if they're doing that much good, but I
Right.
take them, right? But
Yeah.
there was a study that said that if we take our multiple vitamins, we lower the risk of dementia. There was controversy about that study, but I tend to take my multiple vitamins as well and take vitamin D. Um, African Americans are vitamin D deficient because we don't absorb that good sunlight as well as people think. So I think talking to your doctor about the supplements is probably the better thing to do, but a good balanced diet, and that's sometimes difficult because food is expensive and the right kind of food is more. So it's more than a notion. It's more than just saying to people you need to eat better. There's
Mhm.
a cost to that. I
Mhm.
think when it comes to exercise, we just have to do it wherever we can because
Right.
there's a cost to belonging to some of these gyms and things. So we have to do it where we are, and then depending upon our neighborhood, we may or may not be able to go out in the street. So
That's right.
even though these modifiable risk factors came out and they're exciting and interesting, we also say that with the caveat of do what you can do and
Right.
do it in the increments in which you can do it because
That's
everybody
right.
can't do it at the same level.
That's exactly right. And I'm glad you mentioned that we're not um downplaying the challenges and the barriers that some people face, even being able to walk outside. So I live in an area where I can walk in the woods, I can walk
Mhm.
on a trail, I can walk, pretty much anywhere safely in my neighborhood and get in exercise. I don't live far from a Whole Foods that's near a
Right.
Trader Joe's, that's near a Wegmans, that's near,
Mhm. Mhm.
farm, Sprouts and all of that. So but I am mindful not everybody
Right.
has access to healthy food options that's accessible.
Yes.
Paying $25 or whatever I pay Planet Fitness doesn't hurt my budget. But I had to realize that $25 for some people a month is not doable.
Right.
And so we've got to come up with, as a society, better ways to help people be healthier. And I'm
Yes.
hoping that we can see, although I'm not that optimistic about it in considering the current climate. But what are some things that policymakers that you would recommend that they do to help in this fight against Alzheimer's? Because that stat was startling when I was doing the research. An increase of 140 something percent.
Yeah.
Granted, it's from 2001 to between, to over a 20-year period, but that's still very startling. So what
Mhm.
would you recommend that we advocate for to help in this fight?
So a number of things, and I policymakers are in a very interesting situation right now.
Hmm.
But we have a challenge with long-term care. We have challenge with care anyway. This disease is breaking the bank in terms of what it's costing families to care for a loved one with Alzheimer's disease. I mean, it could be $60,000-$70,000 a year, and even when a person puts a loved one in a long-term care facility, it is stressful. So this disease is not only costing dollars, but it's costing the physical, mental, social, financial health. It's
Mhm.
costing us that all of those kinds of health of the persons who are taking care of a person with Alzheimer's disease, because this disease can last for 15, 20 years. And it
Wow.
gets to a point where a person needs to have full-time care 24/7. So we do have policies now that can help families pay for some of that.
Mhm.
I think more is needed because often the caregiver has to come out of work or has to reduce hours or is looked upon pretty strangely by an employer because they have to take so much time off. You know, caregiver may not come by, so they have to take care of that loved one. And
Mhm.
so the cost of care is something that definitely should be looked at. This is a disease that is growing everywhere globally when we look around,
Mhm.
irrespective of whether it's low income, middle income country, it's growing, it's globally. And it's really going to cost a lot if there's not a cure or if there's not an intervention that really slows it down. And that intervention is accessible to a lot of people. The drugs that are out there now that actually modify the disease are called, they're about 30,000 a piece, 26, 28, 30,000 a piece a year. Well, who can afford that, right? So,
Right.
so, well, thank God Medicare covers some of that cost. And so I think looking at cost, I think looking at the cost of the disease and the burden it takes on the families and and policymakers definitely should be looking at these long-term care facilities and how we're going to take care of our loved ones as we age.
Yes.
I don't
Yes.
know some of the policy changes that's kind of in jeopardy in some cases. So that's something we have to look at. And then, one of the things I have worked on for a long time is making sure everybody is at the table, irrespective of race, ethnicity, is at the table to participate in building out these drugs and making sure that we're all included so we can believe in whatever the intervention is. So there
Yes.
are a lot of things we can do, but we have to continue to talk to our policymakers and make sure they understand that the extent to which this disease is really killing us.
Awesome. Now I got two texts as you were talking, by some friends. One said, "Is there a connection between marijuana use and or cannabis?" They said marijuana, but cannabis and marijuana use and Alzheimer's.
I think so. I can't really talk about that a lot. I haven't really looked that one up, but I I I can only imagine that anything that interferes with the way we think, it could certainly. I can see how that could be a contributor to risk factors. Yeah, and it
And
is it's being used so much now. I just wonder down the road what that really is going to do to our brains.
and the other one, from a good friend of mine who is a PhD child psychologist, said that she heard that white women die earlier, Black women live longer with Alzheimer's. Is that true?
Say that one. White women
She heard that white women die earlier and Black women live longer with
with
Alzheimer's.
Alzheimer's.
Yes.
I'm not sure about that either. I will look
Okay.
that one up. I hadn't heard that. I,
Okay.
I don't. I don't. I'm not sure. I know we have an earlier onset of it.
Okay.
Um, Blacks have an earlier onset, but whether or not we actually live longer, I'm not sure about that one.
Okay. And then my other friend on the cannabis responded again that they read a study that CBD and other cannabinoids have proven to help improve Alzheimer's disease. Is that true?
I don't know about that. I don't want
Okay.
to I don't want to comment about that. I only know of two drugs that improve Alzheimer's. One is lecanemab, and the other one is donanemab.
Okay.
Um, so I'm not familiar enough with that study to make an argument for it.
Okay, got it. Well, this has been extremely informative, and I am so grateful that you're taking the time. I know we are so busy, and you've got some things going on, and so you still took the time to be with us tonight on Meaningful Conversations. I've got to get you back because I'm sure people will have other questions, and I want to just talk about, cognitive health, brain health in women. So eating healthy, exercise, those seem to be the main prescriptions for almost every chronic health condition or
Yes,
disease.
I
Hmm.
was just doing a talk at the University of Wisconsin last week, and I said you could pretty much drop what I'm saying to you into almost any chronic disease, and if we improve those risk factors, we could really. And I the drugs are great when they work,
Mhm.
but what really works is what we talked about tonight.
That's right. Yeah.
Yes,
And
and
we didn't mention sleep, but good sleep habits
oh
also,
my,
right? What's the
yes,
yeah, yeah,
yes,
yeah, yeah,
yes,
right? When we
yes.
can get it in.
Sleep is a big issue, and we need to replenish our brain, and so we need good deep sleep. So that means we have to turn off the lights. We might need to turn the clock around. We certainly need to sort of settle down. So, and we're not bringing the phone to the bed. So we need to do things to have a good sleep. That is really causing a big problem.
Mhm.
Many people have sleep apnea, don't even know it. Most people, just like with diabetes, people have diabetes, high blood pressure, hypertension, don't even know it. So it's important to get to that doctor's visit and understand what the doctor is saying. Take somebody with you, take an advocate with you, so that you can get a good interpretation of what's going on in that doctor's office. But those numbers, very, very important. I
That's
can
right.
tell you that as we age, that LDL will creep up, and that increases chances for not only this, but also stroke and other chronic diseases, kidney diseases and things like that. We don't want a lot of that. We're the first persons to get an amputation, and that's not good.
That's right. And also, in addition to, like you said, the deep sleep too, I think you had mentioned about that we sort of glossed over, but people live air pollution. People living in these communities with bad air and toxins have an extra challenge and barrier or risk factor that we should also put into consideration. I remember when the hog farmers were
Mm.
trying to make their case in
Mm-hmm.
terms of why they were not harming people's health. I'm so glad that there were researchers that were able to show and that's just one example, but also noise pollution too,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Right? Some
Yes.
people
Absolutely.
don't, and I think there was one study that looked at kids during well, they looked at it during COVID with the years lost, learning years lost. But one thing, kids having to like constantly be in environments where I say all hell was always breaking loose, and the impact that it had on their ability to learn. So, and that's another topic for another day, but noise
Absolutely.
pollution.
And too much noise increases hearing loss.
Mhm.
So when we think about, so hearing loss was one of those risk factors. It's one
Yeah.
of the recent ones.
Okay.
It's an isolator. It absolutely is
Yeah.
a risk.
Wonderful. Well, I hope you all and as people download the podcast, I hope that there's some nice nugget that they can take, and certainly chock full of really good information. So thank you so much, Dr. Byrd. We're getting ready to
Oh,
close
great.
out. We've got about 10 minutes, 13 minutes, and I want to close out on just kind of having you share some other nuggets from your personal perspective. I always ask my guests these three questions. Sometimes I
Mhm.
switch them up a little bit, but most of the time, these three are part of the closing questions. What three good books would you recommend that either change your life or that are just staples in your library?
So let me just say this. I am a scientist, but I am also a Christian, and I'm working my way through the Bible with a different lens.
Mm.
And I'm trying to understand it better.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's one, that's a staple. Um, I like Isabel Wilkerson's book, Cass.
Mm.
And in this climate, it gives a good contextual um, realization of how systems and organizations work
Yeah.
to points, good, bad, or in between. So that's the second one that I think is a must read for anyone. There's
I
an
keep
old
it, I've just referenced it for something I'm working on. I'm working on a book and I just went to hers or something.
that's a
Yes.
great one. I like a very old little book that I would just recommend for anybody. It's called The Four Agreements.
Yes.
It was written by Don Miguel Ruiz, and it gives four simple truths.
Yes.
It says, be impeccable with your word. Um, don't make assumptions. Don't take things so personally, and then
Yep.
always do your best.
It's
Um,
on my bookshelf. I was
and so
looking
your
for.
bookshelf,
Oh
and
yeah. Oh yes. I was seeing if I could grab it real quick, but
uh-huh.
yeah.
And
Yes.
then there, I think there is a fifth agreement out there, but I think that one sort of sums up life pretty well. We can, and
Mhm.
particularly women who tend to take on so much from so many different perspectives. The muledom thing we do is just not good for us. It's not healthy in any perspective. And
Mhm.
so, sometimes we beat ourselves up a lot because so much is expected of us. And so that little book, when I'm going through, it's so, and it's thin. It's easy to read.
Mhm.
It's thin. You can
Yeah.
get through it quickly, but it's
Yeah.
one that I like, and it's been a staple for a long time for me. Then it's an
Yeah.
old.
Yeah, I love it. It's a staple for me too.
Uh-huh.
What about as you think back to your younger self, what is advice or some advice that you would give to your younger self? And the reason why I ask this is because I'm hoping that there are people much younger than us and younger than me, younger than you, younger than, the general demographics. In fact, um, my Instagram demographics is young, which I was surprised. It's not, I don't have thousands of followers, but and so I do know that they are listening. What's a message or some lessons that you would tell your younger self that looking back you learned that would have been valuable to know as a youth or younger?
My mother used to say a couple of things, and one was just allow yourself to think. And my sisters and brothers and I talk about this one all the time. And we didn't quite get it, I think, until we were grown. Um, but give give yourself chance and space to think through. And now, in other words, don't be so pressured, even as a young one, to do the traditional thing all the time. Give yourself permission to think
Mhm.
through
Mhm. Mhm.
what is in the best interest of you. And she preached that all the time. I mean, and we get it now.
Mhm. Yeah.
And it's
Don't be in
very
such a
simple.
hurry,
Yeah, don't
right?
be in such a hurry,
Yeah.
and just walk through life with balance,
Hmm.
with a balance. Yeah, it's gonna
Yeah,
be okay.
that's right. And this world is very interesting right now. And I too am a Christian ordained minister, and I believe wholeheartedly, without question, that God is still in control. So I try not to worry too much about what is happening in the world, but I do have some concerns. And so I'm always looking for people to share what gives them hope, even in times like these.
Yeah.
What gives you hope?
Life. I think what gives me, well, a number of things. I think our next generation gives me a lot of hope in a number of ways. And I think we get discouraged sometimes. Our older generation gets discouraged sometimes, and particularly as we see younger people sort of falling away from the church sometimes. But I think they know. I think if we just give them some space, they've been taught well. We did that.
Yes.
And
Mhm.
I think whether it's in the corporate world, the academic world, or in the political world, I think our next generation is going to have so much to work with.
Mhm.
Uh, Science gives me hope. I think when I look at the changes in the scientific world, um, it's going to revolutionize the way we think about health and wealth, because health is our wealth. And
Mhm.
I think I just think there's going to be um, a new energy
Mhm.
around how we live and what we're able to do. And
Mhm.
I think our next generation is going to do much better than a lot of people think.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, on the other side of that, what's most concerning to you right now?
Well, I have to say that the thing that has given me a lot of grief is our political landscape right now. And I think the part of it that is that leaves people feeling hopeless, that leaves people feeling like right is wrong and wrong is right, that leaves people feeling confused about, who's winning and who's not. You know, does wrong win? And maybe some of this will inspire us to get to know more, to get
Mm.
to understand more.
Mm.
um, I think we as in people in general, have to voice our opinions through our vote. And when we
Yeah,
think about health or any other aspect of society, our vote is our voice.
that's
And
right.
so one of the things that might come out of people being, and I'm trying to say this as circumspect as I can, um, but one of the things that comes out of disappointment in the way things are going is a platform to do things different. So it is
Mhm.
incumbent upon us, irrespective of platform, to assure that we are connecting our everyday life with our own responsibility around around voting, particularly
Right.
voting.
That's
Uh,
right.
and if we're 18
Mhm.
and we can read, write, and do arithmetic, we need to
Right.
be figuring out how to get to a poll and vote.
That's right. The three R's. That's exactly right. Well, it's always a pleasure to see you and to
So good to
hear
see
and
you.
learn from you. Thank you again so much for being on Meaningful Conversations. And our time is up.
Our
Time
time is up.
flies.
That went quickly.
Yeah.
You said
It,
it.
I,
That,
it
that
goes
went too
really
quick.
quickly. Yeah, when you're having a meaningful conversation, it does.
It does. I want to say
Exactly.
just one thing though.
Mhm.
You mentioned in your outset that women have this disease more, and it's not only because we live longer, and that gap is closing. It is also because our biology is different,
Mhm.
from men. And so there are many studies around that, and particularly around hormones and menopause and those hormones that are estrogen. So there are many reasons for that. And we didn't get to the race question, but we do know race and ethnicity. Those are not biological. So what we have to think about is ancestry. And
Mhm.
finally, I do want people to join our study. We have many studies that we want Black people particularly, because again, if there's ever going to be a cure or an
Yeah.
intervention, we want everybody to be able to leverage that. And if we're not helping to build out the drugs or the intervention, they may or may not work for us, just like the
So,
hypertension drugs.
so how do they find out about the study? Where can they go to sign up and enroll and find out more about it?
They can just get in touch with me. They can call me on my mobile. I will put my mobile out there, 919-218-8007. That might be the easiest way to get in touch, but we're looking for 13,000 people to join our study. And we
Awesome.
would,
Do you have to have Alzheimer's?
no, you can be perfectly healthy and you don't have to come to us. We'll come to you. And then we give you a token for your time. for participating.
Wonderful. Well, we will put that out there, and it's on your website.
It's on our
Dr.
website. Yes.
Okay. So
And
we will.
I can get something to you too, or
That will be great.
yeah.
And I will post it. I'll post it on all my on my Facebook, and I will put it when we edit this in the information under this particular segment.
I will
So
send that.
thank you.
And we want our people, because we're not in the studies enough. You know, our percentages are way down, far below our representation. So we don't want that.
Absolutely. No, 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 no. We definitely have to do better with getting involved in clinical trials, and especially this one. So that's great. Well, thank you, everybody, for tuning in. No matter how you access meaningful conversations, thank you. Thank you, whether it's during the live stream or whether you pick it up later, which I know people do. And actually, when I get my monthly statistics on the podcast, we had some downloads from Ghana. So if y'all are still doing that, downloading meaningful conversations, thank
Wow.
you. Thank
Wow.
you so much. You can replay the show and share it. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, Dr. Michelle Laws. Please, please, please. You can also follow me on Instagram at Michelle Laws 007. Or you can access this episode on my Meaningful Conversations podcast on most podcast streaming services. Again, I want to thank our guest for tonight, the phenomenal Dr. Goldie Smith-Byrd.
Thank you
The
so much.
information is invaluable. I hope you take it and use it and share it. Until next time, take care of yourselves. And remember, during Women's History Month, to be especially nice and loving to other women in your lives and community. Peace and blessings to you all until the next time.
Wonderful.
Well, thank you.
That was fantastic. That time went by so quickly. I had
it does. Let me.
Oh gosh, that went very quickly.